The Accidental Gentleman. Written and narrated by Elisha Dessurne, with characters read by Chris Jones and Lewis Waters. Chapter 1. The haze of the afternoon sun was settling over the cobbles of Falcon Road. A sleepy presence set the pace of the evening shift in Werner's printing house. Nicholas stared onto the street from the shop window as if waiting for somebody or something important to arrive. He had been told earlier that day to move a stack of books from a trolley and into the window display. He found real success, however, in sending dust flying into the air and leaving it just enough time to settle before disturbing it once again.
I've had it.
With a grumble and a grunt, a large man prized himself from a dark corner at the back of the shop. Mr. Conrad Werner was a stocky fellow in his mid-30s, however he looked nearer to 50. Decades of drinking and smoking far too many cigarettes for one man's lifetime had left him with splitting rosy cheeks and an impressive beer belly. There had been no doubt in his mind that Nicholas was perfect for the job when he was hired just a couple of days ago. Today, however, Werner began to feel agitated and a little uneasy about the setup.
Nikolaus Sweeney.
The deep, warning tone mirrored the way in which he slowly moved out of the shadows towards the young apprentice. He hung onto a nearby bookshelf, waiting for a response from the daydreamer.
You won't do. That's it.
Taking in a wheezy gasp, Conrad lunged towards the boy, only to lose his balance and fall into a heap in the middle of the shop floor. Nicholas was sharply pulled from his world out on the street. Spinning on a heel, he stood frozen, facing into the cloudy room. Waving a hand to clear the air, he blindly trod towards the disturbance.
Conrad, sir?
After no answer, he continued cautiously.
Was that you?
The new floor assistant was a dark-haired teenager of slight build. In a smart manner, he wore a thin, blinding white shirt. This fashion of attire slowly disappeared with the descent to his tattered and mud-lathered boots. Not yet matured in more ways than one, his voice squeaked with distress.
Conrad?
Silence and dust drained from the room, a quiet moan taking its place.
Nico? Oh, blast, Nico.
A flustered Werner lay, pot-belly protruding from beneath his shirt.
Nico, stop, darn it.
What on earth are you doing on the floor? Come on, let's get you up.
With a flop to the right and one to the left, Conrad hoisted himself up onto his elbows. Pushing a pale, bony hand out of his face, he relaxed in position.
I don't need your help, boy. It's your fault I'm down here in the first place. You and all that blasted noise.
With a drowsy shake of the head, he continued.
There I was, only last night, Nico, with you on my mind, thinking what a great candidate you were for the big boss. What a great choice I had made with you.
A slight smile stretched across the teenager's face, and he leant in close.
I hope you'll let me stay on working here.
A sharp scent of whiskey burnt the acne-dug craters on his face. With a wrinkle of the nose, Nicholas couldn't help but answer his earlier question.
That's why you're down here, drinking on the job again? And on a day like today? So much for teamwork, or whatever it is you said. I'll just have to impress him on my own.
Never mind teamwork, Sweeney. I think I've changed my mind about you.
In the awkward way a horse or a camel would drag itself from the ground, the drunken man did so. He turned onto his gut, pushed his arse high into the air, allowing his torso to follow suit. It was a little overconfident of him, thought Nicholas. He moved in close behind, and with wrapped arms under his senior's armpits, erected him upright.
What the devil is going on here?
He had arrived. Sir Jason Locke himself. He was exactly who they had been preparing for all morning. Nicholas with the window display and Conrad with his Dutch courage. Sir Locke was the half of Werner's sponsors whose predominant role it was to always have a hand going either in or out of his pocket, and so, upon his rare visits, a point was to be proved. This was usually in the form of a fresh-faced assistant. Old-timer and young boy suddenly repelled apart, as if they were two magnets meeting at negative ends. They both looked highly embarrassed. Locke himself had a smooth demeanour about him, even in this situation where he did indeed fear the worst. Tallest out of the three, he looked down on Conrad.
Not quite what I was expecting, Connie Boyle.
The elegant man was clearly offended by the layer of dirt about the room. He was going to place his neatly folded scarf on the desk, but reconsidered. Fumbling with it for a moment, he held it towards Nicholas, still looking at Conrad.
This is the new assistant then, is it? A little inexperienced by the look of it.
Realizing that the scarf was still in his hand, Jason slowly lifted his gaze from the garment to the boy.
Assistant, is it not? Would you mind showing a little customer service, or is it only Conrad who gets such privileges? Oh, sir, it wasn't.
Nicholas was interrupted by a long finger waggling in his face.
Let's not,
Jason draped his coat over the lad's arm and, without looking back, ushered a limping Conrad back to his desk. After a quick wipe of the brow, Nicholas got back to the display. This time he was not distracted by what was outside of the window, but what was on the inside. Hearing about the job at Werner's from a friend had come hand in hand with gossip. It was a well-heard rumour that the relationship between Conrad and Jason was not strictly business-orientated. They had the sort of relationship that would have sparked jealousy over the tableau Jason witnessed when he entered. Nicholas couldn't help but search for a reason to venture deeper into the room. Looking back, Nicholas would recognise this as where his story began. By listening into this conversation, the scrawny youngster would find himself whisked away from the dusty printing house and into the lavish life of Sir Jason Locke himself. Conrad was back in his low chair and looking more flustered than ever. Locke drummed his fingers along the desk for a moment and then turned them to inspect the dirt accumulated in doing so.
Oh, Conrad, I do fear you've let yourself down a little this season.
He picked up the half-empty bottle of whiskey.
A little nervous,
Nicholas thought the way in which he spoke was rather provocative. Perhaps the rumours were true. Jason pivoted to slyly watch the boy creep around the bookshelves. A smirk enveloped his face.
You should be on form, old man. I think we'll have to take the reins with this one.
Nicholas felt a sense of confusion take over him, but curiosity overwhelmed. Conrad's tone was serious.
Jason, listen here.
Locke seemed suddenly mesmerised by the lurking teenager.
I know, you're not impressed.
He grabbed the bottle and poured out 2 glasses, harnessing Jason's attention by downing his glass and slamming it on the table.
We have to reconsider.
The tall man took a sip of his drink and grimaced.
I see. And what does the little beggar think about that? He looked quite excited when I walked in, and if I'm honest...
He nodded towards the bookcases.
He seems quite eager now.
He held his gaze and invited a celebration. It was rejected.
Your glass is empty again, just like yourself by the look of it. Look at those rosy cheeks.
Nothing was happening when you walked in, Jason.
He looked smug.
I don't like the boy either.
I never said I didn't like him, Werner.
You saw it when you walked in. He isn't right for the job. He's clumsy. He's a daydreamer. Inexperienced indeed.
Werner's voice began to tremble. It was clear that he was losing this argument. It was hard for the assistant to understand why he was being spoken ill of. Regardless of Werner's opinion, Jason got up from the chair and sauntered over to where Nicholas was hidden.
It's my turn now, old chap.
Jason stood in the shadow aside Nicholas. Conrad was left pouring himself another glass and shaking his head solemnly. Mr. Locke placed his knobbly hand in the small of the new assistant's back. It sent shivers down Nicholas's body. He suddenly put the pieces together. There was a new assistant hired on a yearly basis.
To impress the big boss. The big boss is impressed.
Nicholas hadn't realised he had spoken out loud. He looked up into Jason's friendly eyes and fear drained out of him.
This'll be the start of something spectacular. First stop to get some new boots. It's upwards from here for you. Pass over my things and we'll be off.
Nicholas paused at the request.
Unless, of course, you would prefer Mr. Werner over there.
Looking over at the lone man in his corner of the shop, it wasn't a hard decision. Although not fully aware of what Jason Locke wanted to do with him, Nicholas couldn't help but take this life-changing opportunity.